Hey everybody, welcome back to the Our Anime podcast. This is Promise Neverweekly episode 5. So today's episode is a bit different because we actually already did this episode, but we ran into some problems and couldn't post the episode. So we decided to redo it, but this time bring on 17 and then bring Smurf back. So we're going to re-talk about episode 5 of the Promise Neverland and just kind of get our thoughts back up there so we can still be Promise Neverweekly, but emphasis on the promise, not so much on the never part. So, episode 5. It's only been a few days since we watched it, but I feel like it's already out of my mind almost. So, just a quick recap of episode 5 is this is the episode where Norman confronts Ray over suspecting that he's the traitor, and then Ray confirms that he's the traitor, and they get into a really heated confrontation, and then later, they reveal it to Emma, and then later on, Gilda and Don get involved and potentially try to break into Mama's secret room, and then the episode ends with the door being opened, and we're not sure what their fate will be in the next episode. So that's what we saw. That's what happened. And now talking about it, I guess I'll go to 17. We didn't hear your thoughts last time, so I'll just ask you, like, what did you think?
Yeah, so this has been actually my favorite episode so far of the show.
Nice.
So firstly, like, obviously the conversation between like Ray and Norman is really intense. Really, like, obviously a lot's revealed in that conversation.
Mm-hmm.
I thought it was handled really well in the show. I don't think, I mean, it would have been hard for them to handle it badly exactly because it was just a conversation. But like the voice actors did a fantastic job. It was really good. What really started striking me about the episode in terms of like how the show is doing as an adaptation is actually the scene immediately after it, when like Ray steps outside and there's kind of that moment of silence where you get to see just how broken up Norman is after that conversation, but also just kind of how upset Ray is too about how stuff seems to be going. That scene with kind of neither of them talking, you don't really get to see in either of their heads, but the show does a fantastic job of communicating what they're probably thinking. In that moment of you can see Norman sort of agonizing over how he's basically going to have to lie to one of his friends no matter what he does, and Ray feeling like this plan that he's been putting together for a long time, as we hear, seems to be just kind of like falling apart and is now much more difficult to execute. So I thought that was really, really well done.
Yeah, I agree. I really love that scene because I think I was saying before it was this probably is like my second favorite episode, but it might like after episode 1 because I think they nailed that so perfectly. But it's definitely up there. And this is I think this scene where Norman confronts Ray is probably like a top 3 scene for me, at least in this arc, where it really makes you aware of like the full scale of the characters and their motives and how everyone has their own goals that they want to accomplish, and they might not align with each other even though they're similar, you know, like they all want to escape, but the ways that they want to escape and who they want to bring with them and how they make that happen are all different, and they all have different reasons as to why they want to escape. And I think it's really cool because before I tried to be vague last episode, but it didn't really work because everyone kind of knew. But I think they do such a great job of like, we confirm that Ray's the traitor and that it makes sense. But it's cool because all of the promotional materials up until this point had us thinking like, okay, these are our main 3. These are like the formed unit, like they trust each other. And we're so used to having like people in shonen series being like so loyal to each other that I wouldn't even suspect that Ray would be the traitor just because of all the images I had seen up until now and like the context of him, Emma, and Norman being like the main 3. They're best friends. They stick together. So you don't even think that like one of them might be completely off and doing his own thing.
Right. Oh, and this is also really cool because it's unclear, like, with how Emma reacts to Ray. Like, they could all be kind of putting one over on each other at this point because Emma clearly is sort of like, wait, why is Ray 100% on board with like helping everyone escape now? And she seems to accept it, but at the same time, she's like mad and almost like half threatening Ray at this point.
Oh yeah, she like almost broke his finger.
That scene made me wonder like what Ray's Like, you know, Ray talks about how easy it would be to trick Emma and be like, oh, all we have to do is just pretend we're going to escape with everybody and then don't. And then it's like, what are you going to, like, what is Emma going to do to you when you try that? Like, just think about that for a second.
Especially
if that's what she does when she even has the slightest assumption that you might have caused someone to get shipped out by messing with their tracker, what do you think's going to happen when you tell her, yeah, we're ditching all these losers?
Yeah, and it's also cool because they always bring up, and they've shown a lot in this adaptation, how Emma is the like most physical of the group. Like, you know, she could definitely pull something on them when they're actually in her element of like physically escaping, you know. Like that's not when Ray and Norman will be at their best. They'll be like at their best like planning the escape, not when they're actually making it happen. And it was cool because I really like how they highlighted in that scene Emma's strengths and like her emotional intelligence and ability to kind of see the situation in a different way. Because I think I was kind of on like Norman's wavelength up until that point of just thinking of the logistics of like, okay, Ray's the traitor, but he knows how to break the tracking devices. He knows all of these things. But then Emma thinks about it is like, wow, Ray knew all along how kids were getting sold off. That must be such an emotional burden on him. Oh, wait a minute. How did he break the tracker? He must have experimented on people. Oh, but he did that for us. You know, it's like a completely different way of viewing it that shows a lot more of her strengths and that, you know, she's more of a wild card than you'd anticipate.
Oh, yeah. And I mean, I think, like, of course, like, when she does nearly break Ray's finger, she's, like, doing that with a smile. So I think that adds, like, a different spin on Emma's character that we haven't really seen up to this point that I thought was really cool.
Yeah.
And I also felt like I don't know, it just felt very impactful in animation, too, in a way that it hadn't necessarily when I first read that in the manga. Like, that just hit me. And I don't know, I love pretty much everything that this episode said about all three of our main characters, because it did a lot to characterize all of them.
Yeah, I agree. Well, we talked about it before, Smurf, but what do you think?
Well, I felt like this episode, to completely contrast what 17 was saying, I feel like the episode, nice. I lost I can't think of the word I wanted to say. I feel like it kind of went against, not really against, or it kind of showcases, I think, some of the flaws of this adaptation versus the manga, where like a big part of the manga to me was like all the internal monologue, and I've talked about how it doesn't really have it, and for the most part they've been able to kind of get around that without having to really worry about it. But I feel like this episode, it was where it really showed up, especially like with the scene where you mentioned where after Ray and Norman's confrontation, when Ray left and it was cutting back and forth between the two of them, the manga there had a ton of Norman's thoughts, where he's just constantly thinking over things like, how am I going to do this with Ray? Like, what are we going to do? Maybe I can get him on this side. What if he's actually like, it's all these just Norman brain just going crazy. And I didn't feel like it did that well in the anime at all. Like I felt like it was just kind of too long without any like dialogue of any kind. I was like, this is just kind of silence at this point. It didn't really. I mean, maybe anime onlys would think differently than me. I don't know, but from a manga standpoint, that just it just stood out to me.
See, for me, I felt like I really enjoyed that in terms of like, because they haven't been showing inside anyone's heads, like as we talked about before, right? Yeah. And so the anime did have a big hurdle with that scene, which I completely agree, because it included a lot of what was going on in Norman's head. To me, what I enjoyed is that scene plus the dream sequence. I think collectively, which was also in the manga, collectively kind of communicate most of what is going on in Norman's head in that moment, and the issues that he's trying to get over without actually outright telling you. So so I felt like, to me at least, and maybe it is because I'm also a manga reader, so I already knew sort of what Norman was thinking. I thought it was still pretty effectively communicated without any of the dialogue. I wish we had Fade on this time around to talk to like some anime only people about what they thought about it. But for me, I thought that this moment still sort of carried a similar impact, even with the disadvantage that the anime had.
Yeah, I think, well, when Fate talked about it before, he said that he was more on lines of what you were thinking, and that like he got the implication of what the scene was showing instead of directly telling. But then we did have some people in our Discord server in the channel talking about how they found it really confusing because they were like, why did they do that? Like, what were they thinking? So I think it can go both ways. And I think the big difference is that the anime is kind of implying something, but not directly stating the purpose of that scene. Whereas in the manga, we weren't even in a situation where we were speculating on it. We just knew what was going on. So I think that's going to be consistently the difference between the two is the manga felt like they had information they had to directly tell you and communicate. And like, you know, we kind of need to keep up to date on everything because we have a lot of moving parts going on at once. But the anime is going to leave those up to your imagination and speculation, and it'll be hit or miss depending on the person.
Right. I think that's a good assessment.
And I think I'm kind of two minds because I do kind of like how they showed it, but I do think it was too long because it was just kind of like, you know, maybe 10 seconds too long because they didn't really need to drag it out that long. I think, but I understood why they did it and the implications of like they were both grappling with their different sides of what their motives and goals. But I don't really mind those scenes where they change it as much as the ones where, you know, people are loudly talking about their secret plans. Like those are the kind of changes that are those are the detrimental changes that actively go against the spirit of the manga and story and characters, which by making them look unintelligent compared to this, where it's more of like a stylistic thing of like, we're showing you their conflict instead of directly telling you their conflict.
Yeah, I'm pretty on board with that. And to kind of show just how, I guess, subjective it is, I thought the amount of time it took was really good because it gave it time for me, for the emotion to just sort of like set in and for me to just kind of like think about what Ray and Norman were thinking. I kind of liked the fact that the episode took a breather. And I could definitely see how it felt, how for other people it could feel like that scene like dragged on too long because you know, it was kind of like a long scene where nothing really happens. But for me, that personally just kind of worked.
Yeah, I feel that. I do think the voice acting was really on point this episode.
It was really good.
They did
Maria
really
Issei and she did a fantastic job.
Yeah, she did. She absolutely killed it. I didn't even know what I wanted Ray to sound like in this episode, but I can't imagine him sounding anything different. I really like this scene where they just show him being like so unhinged. It was kind of cool because like he starts off like almost like evilly laughing and trying to kind of show like I'm your final boss, I'm your villain kind of thing. Like, well, not really, but he's like, I'm not your ally, but you know, I'm here to help you. But then you can see like how much he cares about him and Emma. He's like, I've been doing this shit for you guys for years. Like, this has been a long time coming for me. But he's still like, you know, you better not betray me because then I'm going to get you kind of thing. Like, it was very interesting when I think back to it of just like how many different notes he had to strike in this one scene. And it like absolutely terrified Norman, which I think is something that doesn't happen often.
One of the interesting things, though, is the question becomes, what's the point? I think it's really interesting that Norman agreed to Ray's sort of threat because Ray didn't actually threaten anything in particular. He was just kind of like an or else, except for the fact that his goal is ostensibly to save Emma and Norman. So it's both of their reactions there are really interesting because Ray didn't directly threaten anything specific, and Norman just kind of caved at that moment. Yeah, it was interesting. I think it was like Norman was really caught between following Emma's wishes and following Ray's wishes, which is for sure. Yeah, and I think that's part of like what the dream sequence shows, right? Of where that's kind of his imagining of what would happen if he followed what Emma wanted. Yeah. Or the worst case scenario if he did. And that was really cool. I thought that was handled really well too. Yeah, they handled that really perfectly. I didn't know what they were going to do, but I think they did a great job with that.
I actually completely forgot that was even a thing. Like in the manga, when I saw it in the anime, I thought it was original. And then when I was looking through the manga, trying to find, you know, certain panels to compare, I stumbled upon that part, and I was like, "Oh, this is actually in here." Okay, that's interesting. I found it to be really impactful in both. I remembered it from the manga. I thought it was one of the. I thought it was a really, I guess, like striking moment in that section. It was a striking moment in the anime. There's not much, I guess, to talk about for me in the adaptation there. I just thought it was good. Yeah, they just did good with it. It's also cool because I think based on the first episode, I think a lot of people were kind of expecting this to be a lot more like
graphic in violence, you know, because you have the scene of like Connie just being dead with the flower and stuff, and that's like really shocking imagery. But I think the series throughout, besides episodes like this with that one scene, they really don't have a lot of scary imagery, which is why I always find it interesting when people say this is a horror anime, when I don't think it's a horror at all. I think it's a thriller with horror elements, but it's not. But, yeah.
But I also think that's part of why those moments are so effective.
Oh yeah,
when they're
definitely.
there.
Definitely, yeah.
Because you don't really have this like constant kind of inundation of terrifying imagery. It's not like it's trying to set you into this terrifying atmosphere. It's kind of setting you into a comfortable atmosphere where it's a lot of just kind of like heady, let's discuss how we can deal with the situation, and then every once in a while there are those moments of oh fuck, and that really makes it hit you in a way that it wouldn't otherwise, that other shows that are more horror don't quite hit.
Yeah, definitely.
So I almost feel like The Promised Neverland works horror wise because it's not a horror.
Yeah. Right. I saw a thing, like an interview with the mangakas at one point, and they were talking about how they wanted to just include a bunch of death even early on and just start killing off characters left and right. And the editor themselves, the editor was like, no, don't do that. Like, first of all, that's not Shonen Jump. You don't just kill off characters brutally left and right. But also, it'll make any deaths that you do write in way more impactful if you don't have 18 deaths between main deaths, you know?
Yeah.
Yeah, and that's a really good call. Whoever made that decision fucking nailed it.
Some editors making changes for good instead of evil in Shonen Jump.
Right? That's got to be a rarity. But yeah, here it works. Yeah, I'm actually surprised that wasn't part of the author's original plan, because I do feel like that ended up being so important in terms of like how this series builds atmosphere.
Yeah, definitely. I feel like I wouldn't have expected them to want to be like killing characters left and right at all this shit.
I think the plan there was part of there's like a lot of pressure at Jump to have really intense beginnings to really hurt people, and I think that part of their plan was, we're just gonna start killing off characters, and people will just keep wanting to check out the next chapter and be like, oh, I wonder who's gonna die this week. And the editor's like, no, that like people are gonna get so bored of that so fast. And that's not Jump. Like, that wouldn't be even a Shonen Jump manga at that point.
Yeah.
Right.
Don't do that.
Because I feel like what's so intense about this entire escape arc is, at least for me, I am like spent this entire time like up to this point going, not really expecting anyone to die at any moment. Although, again, it's like, oh shit, anyone at some point could be like, could be sold off. But
yeah.
But for the most part, for the most part, the thing that you're sitting and terrified of is the same thing that Norman is afraid of. It's like, who's the fuck is gonna die when they actually try and like make it out?
Yeah, it's not like a Walking Dead where a character could literally die at any moment. Like, I think there was one character where there's just a standard conversation at one point, and just a bullet just hits him in the head and he dies, and it's like, oh, he's dead. Okay, he just suddenly died mid casual. They're like talking about like the flowers or something. He's just dead. So like a show like that, they can just kill off characters at any moment. But I feel like Neverland, like even if they were to kill a character, like potentially if it's Mama opening the door and seeing Donna and Gilda, and if something comes from that, it's not like just sudden. It's like they did a plan. They're going for a risky plan, potentially get caught, and then any consequence of that is kind of expected at that point, where they go with that risk. It's not just suddenly out of the blue, oh, by the way, you're dead.
Yeah.
Right. Because Neverland, instead of having that kind of just like constant oppressive fear structure, has a really sort of like build up payoff structure instead, which I think works for it really, really well.
Yeah, agreed. And I think it's cool because we're kind of worried about them getting caught, not really dying. Like, I'm more afraid of them getting caught, and then it's kind of like another layer of tension, because it's like, okay, so if they get caught, what happens next? Like, they could
do they get
ship
shipped off? Do they just get punished? Like, who knows what happens?
Yeah, like there's so many different things that could happen. That's not even like, if they're dead, they're dead, But then this is like, oh, we don't want them to get caught, because that could imply so many other things.
Either they could get shipped off, they could end up giving like they can be getting interrogated, give up some information. You really don't know. Like pretty much anything could happen at that point. So it's not. It's more. I think that's a lot of what makes it more thriller instead of horror.
Yeah. I think I agree. I'm glad we're on the same page with that one.
I've seen some people. I was talking to a guy on Reddit a few weeks ago who was talking about how after he watched the first episode of Neverland and didn't really want to continue because he thought it was a show based entirely on shock value. And I was no. Nope.
Yeah, no.
Well,
I mean, it has that like shocking moment in episode 1 that's really meant to like grab you and pull you in, but that's really not what Neverland is about. Like,
yeah, nothing like. The episode was too shocking, too interesting. Gotta pass on that one. Like, too much of a twist on that one. I mean, I kind of get it, but I mean, it's like, I don't get it. I won't pretend to get it, but
yeah.
I get it, but never mind. I don't.
never mind. Yeah.
I mean, I could see coming out with that impression like after the first episode, but that's literally it.
Yeah, it was just after the first episode, so I can see it. But it's just kind of weird how many people, like a lot of shows, generally people can agree on what it is, but it's kind of weird how Neverland is. There's like 2 different camps there.
It's kind of weird. I don't even think it's an adaptation thing either, because I don't think they're actually adapting this as if it's like a horror series instead. I think it's still like pretty consistently a thriller that has like this occasional spooky imagery, but I feel like people might be I don't know if this is too presumptuous of me, but I think sometimes people project their wants onto series that could almost align. Like it makes for a better narrative to say, oh yeah, The Promised Neverland is the great new horror anime coming out.
Oh yeah, like
we finally have one.
Right.
We finally have a new horror anime. Yeah. I mean, it makes sense. I can definitely see people wanting to kind of try to push that. Especially, I've seen a lot of people who like want horror anime and are disappointed that there aren't really any really good ones aside from like a select few, like Higurashi and stuff.
Yeah, and that's when it gets really tricky because they're trying to make it kind of fit into this spot that they think it will make it sound like more appealing or more attractive, but it's not really a good description of the series. So it's kind of like praising it for attributes that it doesn't have. And then when you do that, people watch it with certain expectations and then they get let down if they don't meet those expectations, instead of just saying like, hey guys, it's a thriller with mind games. Like that's it. I know it's not as attractive as saying like the best new horror anime, but like that's what it is.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. And that is unfortunate. I feel like horror anime fans have to be pretty sad because like Higurashi is like some of the best stuff that they have, and that show is obviously like as good as it can be at times, like flawed. And so you can imagine like all of the horror fans who then go to Neverland and then they're like, God damn it, I'm still not getting like
I'm not spooked
the great
enough.
horror show that I want. Right.
Right.
Yeah.
I would actually, I don't know if I feel weird calling Neverland anime a mind game show because I feel like they take a lot of that out when they remove a lot of the internal. Like I feel like the mind game is way more prominent in the manga than it is in the anime, it's a little disappointing to me because that's like the aspect that I like the most.
Yeah,
so to
definitely.
Have that part removed is like,
I think we'll have to see how it handles some of the stuff later in the arc because I feel like the real sort of mind games of the show are sort of just being seeded. So we'll see.
Yeah, I'm definitely looking forward to seeing. And I mean, even at this point, even with like a lot of that stuff kind of removed, I still feel like it's a very good show, and clearly a lot of people are liking it a lot, which is about all that I can ask for.
Yeah, I think I was gonna say the real mind games were the friends we made along the way. That's not true.
That's actually like accurate in a funny way, though.
Yeah. But I think that's part of why I like this episode, because I think it was the first actual instance of mind games in that you see Norman tells Ray, I hid the sheets in these spots, and I love
that.
Yeah, I love that. I love that so much. He's like, I told them that, but actually I told you someplace else, and you did this to frame Dawn. Like, that's the first instance of mind games we really have seen in the series. So I'm like, hey, yeah, they got like, this is the mind game, but it's definitely different than like the Death Note style mind game where I remember, like in episode 2, like the introduction of L, like, that's like the big thing where it's like broken down, like, I bamboozled you, and this is how I bamboozled you in order, like bam, bam, bam. And
or there's that episode, I think it's like 7 or 8, where it's like the whole episode of him just trying to find that girl's name.
When he's trying to see her name.
It's like the fiance of like the sort of FBI agent or something.
Or,
so good.
Yeah, like that, or even like the bus scene where like you see the intricacies of these like plots happening, and I think we're not really seeing the intricacies, but if it's something like, as long as they do something where it's like they have Norman explaining how he tricked Ray in that scene, I think I'll be happy enough with like how they do mind games.
Yeah, and so that's exactly it, right? Where it's clearly not going to have like a Death Note point by point breakdown as it's going on. The show seems to be trending away from that, which is kind of how the manga was. But I'm not going to be mad at it if it still manages to communicate the mind game in a different way. I actually might like it more, depending. So again, for me, it remains to be seen how I feel about how this show does the mind games, but. I understand Smurf, like how it did it in this episode might not be the greatest for you, but for me, it actually has me like really hopeful that it'll do it in a kind of cool and unique way.
Yeah, I think I agree. It'll be interesting to see because it's just definitely going to be different. We said this kind of before. This is the more the big oof part of the episode of Don completely contradicting what they told him not to do and went in the room. And everyone's like, thank you, Don. Thank you, Don. About to become Katsudon, thanks to your poor actions. I had to make the joke again. I liked it so much the first time after I ripped it off from someone that I needed to bring it back. But
it's the second time you said it this episode.
I know. Oh, I said it offline the first one, I think. I forgot.
I think we'd started already. But I don't know.
I'm done with the joke now. But I like that. I think people were giving him shit, like fair, like it's fair, but I think given the information he has at the time, I think it's fair as to why he would, why he would jump to those conclusions, because he wants to save Connie, because he thinks that there's the possibility of her being alive. Like, I think it makes sense.
Yeah, I agree. I think his choices make sense. I mean, well, sort of. I think they're dumb, but I like his character, and I think it makes sense that he does that.
Reasonably dumb.
Reasonably dumb choices.
Yeah. And like he's still stupid, but like I think they've also played up a lot more in the anime adaptation how he really felt like he had to protect Connie, which was like a nice addition to make. So naturally, if he has that like protective instincts towards people he considers family, you can see why he'd feel antsy about like trying to find her. Yeah,
and it makes sense because like if they just told him, like obviously they don't want to tell him that she's dead, but if they tell her like she's still alive, in his mind it's we have to get out of here as fast as we can. We have to do this no matter how risky it is because we have to get to Connie.
Yeah,
right.
I'm sure he would not have done anything. I'm sure he would not have done that rash if he had known that she was dead already.
Yeah, exactly.
Which again is cool because it shows you the consequences of Norman and Emma's choices and their and them sort of like caring for like Dawn and Gilda and sort of coddling them because of it. I think that's really cool.
Yeah. Yeah, it'll be interesting to see if he gets dead or not. I'm guessing he's not going to get dead because it's a bit too obvious. I can see it being like one of the main three opening the door and being like, "Hey Don, we knew you were going to pull this shit, but this is dumb." Like we told you so.
Like I honestly don't remember who's on the other side.
I don't remember.
I'm actually really interested to see. I feel like
I don't remember it quite happening like this. Actually,
I feel like just from not bringing any manga information into it, but just kind of based on seeing a lot of stories in my life, I feel like ending on a cliffhanger there is going to be anticlimactic. It's going to be like Emma or somebody walking, but I honestly don't remember.
Yeah, I genuinely don't remember what happened.
Because I've seen Erased. I know there's that episode that ends with the guy with the killer or whatever walking into the bus, and you're like, oh shit, and then the episode ends, and the next episode is him starts with him walking out of the bus, and nothing happened, and it was like, oh okay.
Yeah, I genuinely don't remember what happened here either, but I didn't seem to remember the door opening at that when it's happening now. So I almost feel like the anime is gonna go somewhere a little bit different with this scene. So we may be completely surprised.
I just don't remember Don being this much of a dumbass. So
well, yeah, Don did something cool in the manga, but I don't know if they're gonna have him do it, so I won't say it. But I'll tell you guys offline. So, but
okay,
I remember that.
Or next week, whenever
or
if
next
it
week.
happens or not. We'll see.
We'll find out. But I remember that. But I'm not sure if they're just gonna like skip that over for time. I don't know. I'm not gonna be too
I feel
salty.
like we're getting a little close to spoilers, but
Yeah.
I want to ask. I wanted to ask, how do you guys feel about the pacing of it so far?
I think that they're doing well, all things considered, which sounds kind of negative, but I really do think they're doing a good job of pacing the reveals, considering they have 12 episodes and 37 chapters. And I don't think they've actually, besides the few things they skipped, I think in the early chapters that I'm going to guess they're going to reveal later on because they're doing stuff out of order. I don't think they're actually missing too many important things. You know, I think they're hitting the keynotes and they're doing a good job with the keynotes. And as long as they continue to do that well, I'm really not going to have complaints. And I also feel like we've just covered a lot of ground in 5 episodes. Like, I feel like we've made like huge strides. It doesn't feel like, I don't think it feels slow. I don't think it's like a slow build of like, oh, it's 5 episodes. When are we going to see what's happening? Like, I think we've made some pretty bold moves in these 5 episodes. So I'm pretty content.
Yeah, same. Actually, I'm actually pretty impressed with just how they've chosen to build an individual episode. Because what I think is really neat is that they're obviously like kind of shoving multiple chapters and like different amounts of information into each episode. But each episode feels like a kind of complete independent arc in its own way. So even though they're having to kind of like dice stuff up, I think that each episode of the anime works as an episode of anime and not as just like that, you know, it's like some kind of like Frankenstein's monster combination of like manga chapters trying to get all the information out. So I'm on board with it so far.
Okay, I wanted to ask because I know that they said it would cover the whole first arc, which is, as Shaw said, 37 chapters, and it's a 12-episode show. So that means they're going to have to do about 3 episodes, about 3 chapters an episode. Which, when I heard that, I was thinking like, okay, so like normal shonen like Black Clover or Boku no Hero generally do, like Shonen Jump generally does 2 chapters per episode. Unless you're like One Piece and you're doing 1 because
do half a chapter.
It's awful. And so I was like, but Promised Neverland is like pretty dialogue heavy.
Yeah. So
doing dialogue heavy, like way like more chapters per episode, I'm like, there's no way. Like that's gonna just be way too fast. Like I was really kind of worried about it, but I'm actually really impressed. Like we're already 14 or 15 chapters in, so we're already at about 3 chapters an episode, and I haven't felt like it's been going too fast at all. I actually feel like that a lot when I watch anime that I've read the source for, like when I watched JoJo Part 4, or when I watched some like Attack on Titan. Well, I guess Attack on Titan not so much, but more JoJo. I felt like it was fast.
Yeah,
and I felt like they were speeding through some things. There were some things cut out in Part 4, like some minor things here and there, but like Promised Neverland, I've been actually really impressed with how good it feels.
Yeah. Big agree on that. Like every, I don't know, like it doesn't feel like they've cut anything like really bad so far. Again, like Shaw's talked about some stuff that they cut in the early episodes, but I think that she's right in terms of how they're probably gonna make up for that later. I think they're gonna roll a couple of reveals together, is my guess, which is probably pretty necessary for making that stuff kind of work out. So I'm fine with that. And then the pacing overall has just been pretty good. The episodes haven't felt particularly rushed. They've all felt like they're nice independent arcs, and I can see a lot better now than I did early on how they're going to make this work in the amount of episodes they have.
Yeah, definitely. I feel like they're definitely, I think you could definitely tell based on this episode, like they know what the important parts are and they know not to rush the important parts. So they're going to focus on those and give them the attention they deserve. And I think like, even if we look at the actual breakdown of like how many chapters they cover per episode, like some people could be like, well, mathematically speaking, this is rushed. And I'm going to say like, well, it doesn't feel rushed, which is all I really care about, you know?
Right.
I mean, it definitely varies from manga to manga. For some reason in my head, I always think about it as dialogue heavy chapters or dialogue heavy shows needing to be less chapters per episode than
Yeah.
action heavy shows. But like when I really think about it, it's like it's should be the opposite. You can speed through dialogue, but for action, the anime usually tries to draw it out. Because like for Boku no Hero, like like for some of the sports festival stuff, there were some fights that are literally one panel in the manga.
Yeah.
And then the anime starts like a solid minute. And
yeah.
So those I think but I always think about it as the opposite when it actually is like action tends to be drawn out more because it's more visual. You want to add more punches and more like you want to make it more interesting to watch than just still image of a punch, still image of a kick and then the fight's done or whatever.
That's actually a good point. That makes sense. Yeah, it definitely seems more intuitive to me that dialogue would take longer, but that's a good point.
Yeah, and I think it really depends because, you know, they can change things based on the adaptation. Like you could have a fight scene where it's literally just 3 panels and they make it like as if it would be like 3 panels short and they don't really elaborate on it. But they could also take a conversation and shorten it for the anime while just like hitting the key points. And, you know, vice versa for each. So I think it does really depend on what they choose to do. But I do think they've made the right choices on what to focus on and what to shorten, so to speak.
Yeah, I agree. I think they're doing a great job. I was actually really worried because basically the only thing I've seen from this director was Perfect Insider, which I really, really didn't like. And I particularly didn't like how I just didn't like how it was directed. I didn't like really anything about it. So when I saw that he was doing it, I was like, oh god. But he was also the director of Sora no Woto, which I haven't seen, but I know a lot of people love.
I've seen it, and I definitely think there's a lot of Sora no Woto-ness in this, which works better in some ways, not in others, because that's a very like atmospheric slice of life series where they don't outright tell you about the setting, which is like one of the appeals is like, oh, they don't like explicitly describe this post-war setting, but I think it also
works. Yeah,
it works. Yeah,
so the tone explained anything about the outside world right now. Like,
no, but I think it's speculation. No, but I think it comes into terms where like they're so against doing the internal monologues. We have Krone screaming her plans in her room to her weird ass doll, like that kind of thing. You know, like some hits or miss with that. Where everything is explained in dialogue compared to having internal monologues a la like Death Note, you know. But I think it's mostly worked out well because I think I love a lot of the directing choices they made, like a lot of the perspective shots. And I know Bobda, the Nick Creamer who writes for Anime News Network, has talked about a lot of the background arts and how like they're not as detailed as they are in the manga. But the anime has changed to make the house backgrounds feel a lot more oppressive and claustrophobic, which is kind of cool because I didn't notice it that much in the manga, but I do feel that in the anime, how it feels like, you know, you get that really intense feeling of like someone walking down a hallway or just the lighting showing just how like it makes a lot of things feel hidden and really inherently like spooky, not spooky, but I think like intense, you know, and I think they've done a good job with that.
Yeah, I really like when directors know how to kind of mess with the setting a bit and just kind of to keep it. I guess another non-anime example of that is, I don't know if either of you have seen Breaking Bad.
Yeah.
They do a really good thing, and I didn't even notice it until a friend pointed it out. But as the show goes, the lights in Walter's house get darker and darker.
Oh yeah, I can see that.
So if you go back to if you watch the last episode and the first episode everything's really brightly lit. In the last episode, it's like all the lights are off basically. Like the light just gets darker and darker as Walter slowly goes down and down and down his path. So I thought that when shows can do really interesting things with lighting and stuff like that, like even subtle things you don't notice. Like, but I mean, I noticed a bit more here where like it feels like. I think like when you have the camera angle, I feel like you can see parts of the walls like coming in through like the edge of the frame. So it feels like you're inside of a little hallway with the characters and you never know. You just feel like you don't know who's around like the next corner or who's in the next room or there could be anybody anywhere. Anybody could just show up at any time and hear what you're saying. I mean, that's kind of a, like even when they're just talking amongst each other, I feel like they don't pick the best spots to talk about their play.
No, not always.
No. No one beats Krone for bad spots to talk in, but I like the, someone pointed out, they're like making a map of the hallway and they're writing it down. And I think someone in the discussion thread was like, how about we don't write down our secret plans? Like,
Yeah.
how about we don't do that? And I mean, I get it. It's not like that big of a deal, but it is kind of funny of like, yeah, let's keep this one on the down low, or let's like tear this or burn this immediately afterwards.
Yeah, and that's something that's definitely like easier to just kind of like dodge the question in manga. There were definitely a few moments even in the manga where I felt like that's an odd place to be having this conversation. Like one in particular, like on the stairwell in the early episodes, was also in the manga. It was just kind of like, are you really talking about this stuff here?
One episode, I think it was episode 2 where Norman and Emma have a conversation with Mama at the top of the stairs. And then it's like, all right, time to go to dinner. And they leave. They go back. They go downstairs. They get to the bottom of the stairs and they start panicking because they thought Mama discovered it. And it's like, she's going to be coming down too. Don't just stop at the bottom of the stairs. What are you doing?
Yeah. Yeah, like how far do you think that distance is? Where she's like, oh, good thing we've gone down a floor. She can't possibly hear us. Like, it's like we can do like suspension of disbelief, but at some point you're kind of like, I don't want to do that. Like, I think they should just pick better spots. But yeah,
the forest is all right. I mean, I think that's part of the, I guess the appeal of Mama as like not really oppressive, but just like an intimidating, like all-seeing figure is that there isn't a spot that they can safely talk about.
Yeah,
their
right. And that's why I think it's probably a good twist that they were being spied on in the first place anyway, because Mama knowing about like at least a decent chunk of their plans all along kind of makes sense.
Yeah, it's kind of cool. I was thinking that how it's kind of like, well, I guess it's okay that Mama knew that they were like, I guess Mama knew a lot of like what was going on because Ray was leaking to her. Guess it's okay that they just talked at the bottom of the stairs. So same result at some point.
Yeah, so that's kind of cool because it doesn't feel like weird that it's like, oh, they did a handful of slip-ups and then Mama knew absolutely nothing about what they were doing. No, she's pretty aware of like what's going on.
Yeah.
So that's good.
Yeah. Yeah.
And it also sort of makes sense that they wouldn't find the greatest places to like talk at first because like they've considered this entire house like a safe space for all of their lives, right?
Right.
So
they haven't really had the chance to like experiment with like where can we whisper about things.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, it's cool to see. I'm also we talked about voice acting was really great. Also, the soundtrack has been consistently killing it.
Oh, yeah, I forgot about that. The soundtrack this episode was just on point.
Yeah, like during that scene where it's like the confrontation between the two, you're like, this is some pretty intense music. Like, it's very fitting, but I like how intense it is.
No, I loved that track. I'm probably going to be getting the soundtrack of this after it comes out. This was really good.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, I don't know if I have anything else because we can't ask each other about our predictions since we knew.
We all know what's
We've been new.
Yeah.
We all know.
Yeah.
We know. I think that did this episode end in a clip? Yeah, it did end in a clip.
Yeah.
The
Who's behind the door?
Of course. I still think it's great that the ED works as a great cliffhanger.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, it is a good cliffhanger ED.
I know I mentioned this before, but when I first heard it, like when they posted the PV for the show on like one of the PVs on Twitter, where it's like, oh, we're previewing the ED, and it's like a 30-second clip of the ED. I heard it and immediately thought that is going to be great after a cliffhanger. Like I know it will be. That's going to be amazing, and then it does. It works so well.
It does. Yeah, they've used it really well too. I like it as that like chaotic jazziness.
Yes.
Like, it just works so well. I'm liking it. And the OP keeps growing on me every time. Love the na-na-nas.
I noticed that I realized recently that it's the second, or it's one of two na-na-na OPs that we have, because the second Hinamaru Zumo OP also has a na-na-na-na section in it. So it's weird to have two na-na-na in season.
Well, I didn't even know about the other one, so that's cool to hear.
If only we had Na-na-na's Buried Treasure airing this season as well. That'd be really crazy.
Yeah, I don't know if we'll get any for next season, but I'll appreciate the nanas while I can. Yeah, so, I mean, I'm good. I don't have anything else to talk about.
Yeah, that's most of what I wanted to say, too.
Yeah, so...
I think I'm pretty good.
So, thanks for everyone who listened to this again, who listened to the original one. episode of this. And then thanks to everyone who tuned in again to listen to us. Next week will be kind of interesting because, I mean, another episode, so it's already interesting, but we have some really special guests coming on to be revealed later. And
I'm really excited to see who they are. I don't know, but I'm very excited to find out.
Ooh, hopefully it'll be exciting for everyone, but I'm sure it is. They're really cool. So I'm excited to do that one. It's going to be another live stream. Same time, same place, Thursdays, 8 p.m. EST. If you're just listening to us for the first time, you can find all of our episodes on YouTube. We also post we have MP3s of our episodes on Simplecast that also get posted to iTunes and Spotify, and a direct download will be in the link below. So follow us on Twitter, follow our YouTube channel, and join our Discord if you want to talk with us about stuff. And have a good night.
Good night.
Night.